we are so excited to have partnered with both creators, special content for parents, by parents, so that they can help their kids make better decisions, and ins and outs of what do you need to navigate an education system that's so overwhelming sometimes, where you have so many options, so many choices, and you're afraid of failing. So both of you, I am so excited to be here, and I wanted to kind of just jump right in and ask kind of the first question that's top of mind. Taina, you did an amazing video on Super Mom Boss. You talked about your mom, and I just top of mind, what comes to mind for both of you when you think of a boss mom? What?
Such a huge question. Girl, I will give you time to think and I'll just go for it. But when I think of a boss mom, I think of a verb, right? So typically when you hear it, you think about type of mom, but I think it's action. It's being proactive in a lot of ways. It could be a mixture of advocacy for your child. Being a mom boss doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a business, even though in your case it is, but it's also something like an attitude that you take outside of the business. It's how you move in the world, where yes, you know, you're a parent, but you are specific and intentional, and you have a vision for the way that you want to parent and the way that you want to be in the world with your child. To me, that's all of what a mom boss is. So incorporating those businessy aspects, but into parenthood.
Yep. That's huge. I feel like she took all of the words out of my mouth. But specifically, I want to touch on something you said, Lauren, which is that it's not necessarily about business per se. Like being a boss, to me, when I think of boss mom, I think of my mom. And my mom worked a 9 to 5 my whole life, still works a 9 to 5, and she's killing it there. Like she's indispensable at her job. She's doing her thing. But most importantly, I think for her was making sure that she could provide for her kids. So whether that was working the 9 to 5 or quitting her job for a time after my father passed away and being available to her kids, like whatever it took, that's what she was going to do. So for me, that is what being a boss mom is about. It's what does my kid need? I'm going to be that, or I'm going to get that. Whatever it is, I'm going to make it happen. And I think that's a big part of it for me.
And the word that comes to mind hearing both of you is like attitude. It's a mind first and foremost, because that's what my mom has instilled in me and continues to be, because I have not grown up in the but it's that mindset, it's that attitude of that you can do it, and that you'll do it, that you can overcome. And so, you know, I guess like as I shared, this month is back to school. Some kids are going back to school. Other folks are getting ready to make this transition. And curious just to, like, if you had to grade your, like when you think about your educational journey and get a grade, what grade would you give it?
I would give my educational journey an A-.
Ooh, that's pretty high.
Very specific.
Right. A- specifically, not just an A. And I almost want to say B+, but I'm going to give it an A-.
Okay.
And it's because between my mom, the institutions that I attended, and I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, and myself, I think between that, in that trifecta, I came out a great educational product, right? Like I am well educated, I hold numerous degrees, and not only that, I was able to find myself studying something that I genuinely cared about, that I could use to impact the world in a positive way. And to me, that's what education has to be about, more than anything, right? And so that's the A part. The minus part is that because I was gifted, right? Because I was gifted, and Lauren might be able to relate to this, as a gifted, like, little Black girl, it was like, are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? Which engineer, perhaps? Like, once I got a little older, then it was like, oh, we're getting into the STEM, so maybe you want to be like a mathematician of some sort. But like, that was kind of the big push, was like, go be a doctor, right? And so I picked up that mantle and I ran with it for so long. But I learned about something called twice exceptional, which is that often kids who are gifted are also struggling in another area, but it goes unseen because of their giftedness. So I actually found out at 31 that I have ADHD. And no one picked up on that because I made great grades. I was an exemplary student. I was really good at masking my symptoms, but like under the surface, I was like a little duck, just like, you know, trying to keep up with everything and have this facade going for me. And so now I'm like really passionate about making sure that even smart kids, that we are ensuring that they're well-rounded and that they're okay emotionally and socially and all of those different things. And so it was a great educational journey. There were just some really tough times because I had to navigate that twice exceptionalism of being gifted, but also struggling with a learning disorder that I didn't know about.
Can I ask you more about your diagnosis process? Because it's
Yeah.
something that, I mean, of course you didn't know that you had this, but none of the educators that you went through, you know, even to your MPH didn't like pull you aside and say, hey, like, have you thought about this? Are you seeing this? So what was that diagnosis process?
So shout out to Twitter and Instagram. That is what first tipped me off that I had ADHD, because I saw so many other people who did have ADHD starting to speak up about what their symptoms look like. And I was like, that sounds really familiar. Like, why do all of these symptoms seem so, and something that I learned in getting my MPH in my mental health for public health course, we learned that a lot of times people have like different characteristics of a disorder or something, but until those characteristics sort of converge and they make it difficult for you to live your life, then you're not going to get a diagnosis for it, right? So I knew that I had some of these symptoms, but it wasn't until I started hearing about time blindness. I have been late to almost everything my entire life, okay? I learned about how sometimes depression and anxiety are comorbid with ADHD, especially with untreated ADHD. And that I did pick up on in graduate school. And I did go see a counselor and they helped me work through that. But a lot of those things I had been dealing with, losing stuff. I lost my tuition checks. I can't tell you how many times I lost my uniform blazer and got in trouble for it. Like I got into a lot of trouble over stuff like that, to the point where my mom took me to the doctor. And she said, what is wrong with her? Like, I know that she's smart. She gets amazing grades. She's testing in the 98th percentile, but like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? And the doctor's just like, she's a preteen. It's fine. But I wasn't. It was definitely ADHD. Yes, my AirPods, Jesse, that I lost twice. Jesse follows me and
not to call you out, but
right. My followers know, like, that is my life. I'm constantly losing things. And so because I was bright and intelligent, everybody's like, she's fine. But that's because those are the outcomes that we're looking for, right? We're not necessarily looking for kids to feel whole and happy. Sometimes we're looking for them to make really good grades and like all of these other things, right? So for me, the diagnosis came when I started seeing some of those other symptoms that I knew I had that maybe other people weren't cluing into. And that allowed me to then speak to my therapist. And I was like, hey, this is going to sound really crazy, but what if, and I had I'm a researcher. Okay. So I had written out all of these different symptoms, how often I see them occurring in my own life, like all of these things. And I kind of presented it to her. She was quiet the whole time. And when I was done, she was like, yeah, no, that sounds right. And I was like, excuse me? She was like, oh no, yeah, I picked up on that. And I was like, well, when were you going to tell me? Like, what? And she was just like, well, knowing you, I know you didn't want medication, so I didn't think it was necessary. And I think that therapists are trying not to overdiagnose. So she didn't want to place that label on me per se, but I needed that. I needed to know that I wasn't lazy. I wasn't a procrastinator. I wasn't just like irresponsible and losing my stuff. My brain literally just works differently and I need to accommodate it. So that's kind of how I got started. I ended up switching to a new therapist who was able to kind of hone in on helping me build certain habits that allow me to be successful despite my ADHD, and also to heal some of the wounds that I have from childhood of thinking that I was lazy and irresponsible and my mom's problem child and stuff like that due to ADHD. And that has helped me immensely. I can't even tell you. Yeah.
Well, it's never too late is kind of the takeaway to diagnose, and especially now, like I said, the start of the school year, parents
Yes.
have these observations, kids who are like having these feelings that something is like your intuition is just telling you something that you got to lean into it, trust it, go in, write it down. I loved hearing you say, you know, I wrote down the experience, I went and I told, and the same process holds true at whatever stage you are in learning, and in school or not in school, but just learning is a lifelong thing.
Exactly.
I really loved the way that you didn't just take the information from Instagram and Twitter and diagnose yourself, because it's so tempting and it's so easy to do. And it seems like, oh yeah, that's me. Let me just go this way.
Yeah.
But instead, writing it down, and like Aida was saying, really taking notes and then taking it to your therapist and sitting down and saying, what do you think about this? Or these things that you have seen over time in me since we have worked together. All of everything from start to finish, and then even getting another therapist who could help specialize and focus.
Yes. Because
so,
sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, there's been many times where I write down the symptoms I'm experiencing. Professional, and the professional's telling me, no, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And more, I've become convinced that just, again, your intuition, you have this. And if you go to one expert who says, no, it's not this, get a second opinion.
To that point, from the video that we posted today about getting my son speech therapy, it was a similar thing where I went in and they're like, he's good, he's fine. There are actually 2 pediatricians in his office. And so the next time I was coming in, I actually asked, can I see the other pediatrician this time? And I had the same conversation with her. She's younger. She actually has a son who has a speech delay. And so she was able to like listen out for some of the things that I was telling her, ask more pointed questions. And then she was like, okay, I still think that he could be okay, but if you insist, I can send you on to early interventions and you can get him evaluated. So a second opinion, it matters.
It's the advocacy. It's the advocacy. And it's something that through this Summer Mom Boss series, we keep coming back to. And I guess that goes along with having that more focused mindset of this is the way I'm going to parent. I'm going to be intentional. If you don't see what I see, I'm not just going to believe you, because this is the experience that I live. And 20 or 30 or 40 minutes in a doctor's office may not seem to you like it's an issue, but when you're with your child all of the time, it is. And this is crazy, but as you guys know, Noah has a helmet. Because he slept on the same side of his head for the first 6 months of his life. He's a right-sider. I'm a right-sider.
I'm a right-sider too.
Okay. It's a vibe. It's a lifestyle. Not when your skull is developing, though.
Not
so much. But my husband and I took him to our pediatrician. And my husband, this is his field. He does orthotics and prosthetics. And he told the pediatrician, you know, I'm seeing asymmetry when I look down at him. His ears are in different places. They're starting to shift. I see this flatness. And she said, I don't really see it. I don't think you should worry about it. And we love our pediatrician. But my husband said, I'm going to take more steps. I'm going to take him to the office that I just worked at. I'm going to make sure that the resident I was working with sees him, and I'm going to take these measurements. When we got to them, they said, let's watch it because it looks like he might need a helmet. By the time we came back the next month, the threshold for a helmet was a 10-point. He was at a 13-point deviation in his head. Like there was flatness, you know, and had my husband not continued that advocacy for him, we would have missed that molding chance because the skull is hardening, right, as the baby grows. And so timing in your advocacy, I think that's where the urgency should stem from, because if you don't sit down and get your son the speech therapist that he needs now, this could become a bigger issue with his palate. This could affect the way that his teeth are forming.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it's literally called early intervention for a reason, because the sooner you do it, the more impactful the intervention can be. So what sometimes could take up 6 months to a year for my son to accomplish in reaching his speech therapy goals, he did in 4 months. And so it's because we started early and often. Like I was like, how often can we do this? Weekly, we'll be there. Do we need to be there in person? Can we do it virtually? Just tell me how to get it done. We're going to get this done, you know? So, yeah.
Super important, because I often, in doing the work of education advocacy, all these things are important. It's parenting, it's the parent advocacy component, and we treat them as separate things when they're all integrated, when it's student outcomes, and making sure that their brain is formed, that they are learning, that they are getting support early, and that we don't have shame when we missed it either. And I just say, my mom was like, oh my God, I'm in the 5th grade and my child can't do more than multiplication. And the face of shame, the internalization that we failed our kids.
Yeah.
What happens? And so we really, really just got to, once you're aware, the timing, that's the moment of awareness, to ask questions, to recognize it's never too late to shift course and to get the support you need. So I know we've gone over our 8 minutes, but super rich conversation. Want to just kind of close out with a final question around what are kind of maybe 3 tips or advice you would give your followers or other moms and parents about what they need to do to ensure their kids get an excellent education, wherever you're at, K through 16.
So for me, I think about it like a scientist, which is like to always be assessing and evaluating. So outside of sending your kid to school, picking them up, making sure their homework is done or whatever, evaluate the classroom experience yourself. So in part 1 of the Boss Mom series that I did, I shared how my mom advocated for the school to put in windows because she needed to see what was happening in the classroom without disrupting the classroom experience. And so she was able to see, like, how is the teacher interacting with the student? What does my child's face look like when this is happening? All of those things are important. And then assess how your kid is acting when they come home. I have a close family friend. Their daughter was literally getting sick every morning when it was time to go to school. She was like having constipation, regular tummy aches, all kinds of stuff. And it was just coming out of nowhere. But at the same time, because her parents were talking to her, they also noticed that she was just kind of sullen. She was usually a very extroverted child and loved school, loved interacting with her friends. She was still talking about the friends, but was not talking about her interactions with the teacher. And come to find out that teacher had, for whatever reason, been picking on their child. And so they ended up taking her out of school randomly, just middle of the school year. They took her out, put her into a homeschool co-op, and she flourished. And that's just to show you that, like, you kind of have to always be paying attention. I think that's one of the hardest parts of being a parent, is that you kind of always have to be on, and paying attention. But our kids are only at our homes for like 18 years, which sounds like a long time, but from my 3 years, I can tell you it's gone, So it's like, we only have this long to really be in their business and make sure that they're okay, And so that's my advice. I know that's not 3 things, but it's just like, pay attention, assess, evaluate, talk to your kids, and step in when you need to.
Assess, evaluate, step in. I mean, those are the top 3.
I 100% agree with you. And to that, I would add, we've also had this thing of your parent is your first teacher. So supplementing at home some things that you want your child to take with them after those 18 years. Yes. So things like identifying emotions beyond angry, sad, mad, happy. Have you been able to work on explaining grief to your child? That's something that has to be explained in phases over years, But what does that look like, so that by the time they're in college and God forbid they get a phone call that their grandparent has passed away, they already have a type of thought process of, what they need to do in order to feel better. Do they need to come home immediately? Are they able to finish finals? That type of thing, because you want to make sure that beyond the math, science, reading, writing of school, they're going into the world as complete people.
Yes.
And I will just say this. I watched a couple shows on TLC that I'm not particularly proud of. Things like I Love a Mama's Boy and Smothered. And I can't believe how codependent these grown 31, 35, 40-year-old people are on their parents. But if there's one thing that my mother taught me, it's that I need to be able to continue living after she's gone. Right? So she wants to give me all of the tools now while I'm able to use them and practice them, and call her up and be, Mom, how do I breastfeed? This is weird. Or how do I pay a mud bill tax? And so that's been my mission for my son. What can I give to him within these 18 years that we live together that he can take beyond living with me?
Absolutely.
And Lauren, what in your tips and your advice, your parenting videos on attachment style went viral, and they went viral for a reason. It's because you are really talking about not only having that strong communication with your child, you're talking about also recognizing they're separate beings, and that you're trustee, right? They're not, your children aren't essentially an extension of you. But essentially, you're the trustee to allow them to grow and flourish and create the right conditions for them to be, and then you being their best advocate in that process. So I want to thank you both for your time, for starting a Monday morning so fresh and strong. Please follow us if you enjoyed our conversation. We will be having more of these conversations every week, every Monday with Lauren, and always a special guest and whoever wants to join in. So make sure to follow Goodbeat, follow our creators as well. And tag us if you have any mom boss stories you want to share, any tips, because we're a community and we believe in parent power being the best way we're going to increase our collective knowledge, awareness around how to make the best choices for our kids and make sure they get that just awesome quality education they deserve to reach their full potential.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was awesome.
Fun. Have a great week, ladies.
We will.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye, guys.